Good evening and welcome to Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney. Tonight we look at young people and politics in Louisiana at a time in American history when nearly every aspect of life seems to be politicized. We examine the impact of youth on politics and the impact of politics on youth. Well, helping us do that tonight is our host, LSU professor Craig Freeman. Welcome, Craig. He teaches media law at the Manship School of Mass Communication, and his teaching duties give him a good perspective on tonight's topic.
Thank you, Beth. A number of young people today say that they feel powerless to change things politically. We'd like to hear your thoughts on how much political power young adults have. Please take our quick poll online at lpb.org. Be sure to indicate your age and where you live. We'll have the results at the end of the program.
Well, youth voter turnout is lower than all other age groups. That's true all around the world. But in the U.S., our young voters' percentages are among the lowest of any democracy. In non-presidential election years, only 20% of eligible young voters bothered to go to the polls in this country. Louisiana has managed to buck a national downward trend in youth voting, but some political observers believe more needs to be done to engage Louisiana's youngest citizens in the political process.
As far as politics, I have to say I'm not as involved as I probably should be.
I know they're all elected to, do better for their community, and then sometimes you don't know if they're out for themselves or out for others.
If you're hearing nasty things about this group and then nasty things about that group, then it says, well, I don't really want to go with either person, so it tends to make you apathetic.
21-year-old Amanda Powell, 19-year-old Clay Harris, and 22-year-old Marie Langlois are all members of what marketing researchers have dubbed Generation Y. Born between the years 1977 and 1994, they have witnessed political scandals and partisan battles during their formative years that have left them with ambivalent or negative attitudes towards government. A recent Gallup poll showed only 20% of respondents aged 18 and older rated congressmen as having high or very high ethical standards. Adrienne Moore, director of the Riley Center for Media and Public Affairs, sees this apathy and distrust played out through a lack of political involvement.
Today, young people are disenfranchised from the political process. They are not interested in the political process. 53% of young people say they would never consider running for political office. Over 50% say they don't think they'll ever join a political party. They are not interested in the political process.
But in the 2004 presidential election, despite a turnout 20% below older adults, a record number of youth did get involved, producing the largest turnout of under 30 voters in U.S. history. While nationally 36% of 18 to 24-year-olds voted in 2000, 47% turned out to vote in 2004. In Louisiana, youth voting was above the national average, with 44% casting a ballot in 2000 and a 48% turnout in 2004. Issues like the war on terror seem to have energized many young voters. Southern University Student Government Association President Justin McCorkle has witnessed this among fellow students.
It's touching home now because you have a lot of students who have close friends who they graduated with or are graduating with who chose the military option, and a lot of them have lost their lives out there, and a lot of them have lost touch with their family by going out there. So I think that's also opened the eyes of a lot of youth.
Moral values also appear on the radar screen of young voters such as Jimmy Dunphy, a 22-year-old restaurant worker.
I want to vote because I want my voice to be heard. I want the person at the top position in the country, I want his or her values to represent my own.
Adding to the increased youth voter turnout in the 2004 election were pushes by groups such as MTV and Rock the Vote. They ran high-profile campaigns over the air and the internet in the hopes of energizing youth.
I'm here for Voices for Votes in New Orleans.
Locally, Cox Communications spent $300,000 in Louisiana to encourage voting with its Voices for Votes initiative. Nationwide, the groups registered 1.4 million new voters. Presidential candidate Howard Dean used the internet to appeal directly to Generation Y, raising nearly $30 million in the process. And both major parties used blogs, short for web logs, to get their messages out daily, unencumbered by media spin. Republican strategist J.T. Hannon sees technologies such as the internet and cell phones as the new tools to best target young potential voters.
I think that all these new methods of communicating are the wave of the future in terms of politics. Like, you're not going to see press releases sent in the future where someone laboriously writes it out and proofreads it and spends a day on it. It's going to be emailed instantly and then text messaged and then sent to or phoned into a reporter and then or just posted on their own site.
The internet may have recently played a factor in helping to elect Louisiana's youngest representative, 25-year-old Terrell Harris.
I've heard that people use chat rooms to get the word out, spread the message that the election was that day, which is July 9th, and I applaud the people that did it because a lot of people didn't realize that the election was so soon because of the hurricane, because it was a short election.
Harris's election may help energize others in Generation Y to participate in the political process. According to Baton Rouge Chamber of Commerce President Stephen Moret, that could be a cure for Louisiana's ailing economy.
I think if you look at our state, one could argue that a lot of the economic challenges that we face today are really the results of poor public policy choices that were made by our elected officials over the last 50 years. And maybe if more young people had gotten involved and really fought hard for more progressive policies, more policies frankly in line with what the rest of the country was doing, we probably would be much better off than we are today.
While they have shown a resistance to political participation, members of Generation Y have been taking to community service in record numbers. Lynn Clark with Habitat for Humanity sees more involvement by this group than previous generations.
We get calls daily from high school, college-age students, and young adults who really want to give back to the community. Once they come out and help us build, they get what we call habititis, and then they're really engaged and continue for years to help us.
Michelle Gigg, student government president at LSU, feels participation in community service can lead to more political involvement if young people are taught to make that connection.
A lot of students we're seeing now in college are, they're volunteering in soup kitchens. But the next question is, why do soup kitchens exist? How can we better our communities? How can we better our government to realize why we have poverty in our cities? That's what connects students to government, is realizing that there's an issue that they care about, that people in government care about too.
High school participants in Louisiana's Boys and Girls State are taught to make that connection and to become better citizens no matter what their vocation. Representative Jay Darden and gubernatorial candidate Hunt Downer were former attendees. The program helps students see the relevance of politics, a force 26-year-old Sarah Markway feels we cannot ignore.
Sometimes politics gets in the way, and sometimes politics produces fabulous results. But it's the source of all progress we've had and will have in the future.
As usual, our audience tonight was selected at random by LSU's Public Policy Research Lab. This time, however, we polled only 18 to 24-year-old residents of the Baton Rouge area about their views on politics. The overwhelming majority of respondents, 3 out of 4, are college students. Nearly a third already have a bachelor's degree. As far as social issues are concerned, 48% place themselves in the liberal camp, 12% claim to be moderates, and 40% say they are conservatives. Of those taking our survey, 16% are Republicans, 60% are Democrats, and 20% are independents. Over half do not believe that the government pays attention to what people in their age group think. And more than 2 out of 3 believe that the government is run by a few big interests rather than for the benefit of the people. Even so, 80% of respondents feel that their votes do matter, and 72% cast their ballots in the last presidential election. But when it comes to other forms of involvement, the numbers are quite different. 40% have attended some type of government public meeting, and only 1 in 4 volunteered in a political campaign. Now I hear the reason why students don't vote is because they're watching ESPN. Cameron, help me out. Did you watch ESPN instead of vote at the last election?
No, not at all. I voted. I had to vote.
What gets you out?
For me, I think it's because I'm a young African American, and so many people have fought for me to have that right to vote. I have that on my conscience when it comes voting time. Now, I will say honestly, if it were not for that, I don't think I would vote. But since I have that on my conscience, I do vote when voting comes.
Olivia, is ESPN keeping you home?
No, not at all, actually. I'm very interested in politics and what goes on. I watch the news. I definitely voted this past election, and I also voted in the more local elections. I feel it's just very important, and I think our voice is heard. I think it can be heard. I do think, however, that many people my age and even younger feel sort of a disconnection between us and the political process and the government. And sometimes I feel that maybe if we would start with younger children, because they're going to be the future taxpayers, maybe if we start from there, you know, maybe there will be more political awareness, like in middle school, maybe have representatives visit the middle schools, have in civics class, you know, have a trip to the Capitol, you know, show the different rooms what, you know, members of our government do.
Now, Aaron, is that enough to get you involved?
Sure. But, I mean, middle school, that seems kind of young, but I guess, you know, why not? How young is too young, really? I know as a extremely young child, you know, the president would come on, I'd be like, oh, you know, go to the other room and watch something else. But especially lately, a lot, you know, you have to watch it. You know, it's you know, what's going on in the world, and you can't just leave that up to just somebody else, because you don't want anybody making that decision for you.
Now, where do you get your news from? Do you get it from the president?
I like to listen to NPR a lot, National Public Radio, and I also watch the network news and the local news. I don't really get a chance to read the paper that much, and sometimes I'll get it from the internet. It just depends.
What about the rest of you?
MTV News.
I'm back with NPR.
Internet. It's really easy if you know you're at school or you're taking a lunch and you just get on the internet real quick and see what's going on. You could read in about 2 seconds instead of buying a newspaper.
I scan the Advocate at breakfast.
Wall Street Journal.
New York Times. I get headlines sent every day.
But I think that internet is the best way, and I think we're more going to that, is easy access. All these, even the Advocate, are online now. And you can go there, and us being young, we're on a budget, so sometimes we can't get 6 newspapers to our house. So you go online, a lot of them are free. And that's what most of us do.
Now, do you go to newspapers, or do you guys go to blogs? And what the heck is a blog?
I just happen to see when I'm checking my email in the morning, they have headlines go across, and I just get interested and click on it and start reading.
At newspapers?
No, or I'm checking my email on websites.
Okay.
They have just whatever's going on in the world.
Like on Yahoo?
Yeah, Yahoo, yeah, like just like that right there. You just click on and start reading.
So whoever's on the homepage is where you're getting your information
Pretty
from?
much.
How many of you guys voted?
I would say almost all of us.
Wow. Wow. And what made you get out? I mean, is there? I understand some of you, but I mean, what got you involved in the process?
Well, what made me get out was a lot of people was like discouraging voting. They always want to say something about it, but never do nothing about it. And I was like, okay, you're gonna voice your opinion, and you want things to change. You want the potholes to change. You want government officials to do better. You want the hospitals, the insurance to change, but you're not actually voicing your opinion. So I believe in voting, and that's one of the reasons why.
Amanda, do you do more than vote, or is voting the way you stay involved?
The voting is really the only way that I stay involved, but I know with my boyfriend, we have tons of conversations. We kind of butt heads sometimes, but I mean, I like to voice my opinion with the people that I know and my family and friends, even though it can be terrible sometimes because we get in fights over it, but that's pretty much the only way that I stay involved.
When you mean voting on what level, like local politics or nationwide? I think nationwide we're all more, we're more likely to vote for our president as opposed to our local state senator.
That's true.
One reason being is there's a lot of advertisement for the president. There's a lot more, we can read up on the candidates more. On the local politics, all we see is some signs on the side of the road. And I would not want to go there and blindly cast a vote. So sometimes people, including myself, will not vote, not to say I won't vote at all, but not for that candidate or for that office because I don't know enough about it. And that's also part of my fault and all of our faults because there is information out there.
So you vote for national elections, but you don't focus really on the state elections?
I believe it's important to vote in both the state and the national elections, even more so probably the state elections than the national elections because they have a more immediate impact upon our community. And one of the things that I've done besides voting is become very active in my neighborhood civic associations and in the council district that I live in order to help see more of an immediate impact in things that I believe have a greater effect on me in ways that I would like to see the things that I deal with on a daily basis, like traffic and potholes and things of that nature. I want to see those things that I can definitely help make a difference on the local level change, so I do what I can to get involved.
Do politicians care about your opinions?
It depends.
Well, they want to keep that constituency come election time.
If you're in their favor, they care. But if you're not in their favor, it doesn't matter to them.
How do they know?
I don't know. But
I've sent like emails before to senators if like a new topic came up and I felt really strongly about it. I've sent emails and I'll get like a generic email back with their opinion that has nothing to do with my opinion or like a totally different topic. So I don't know if they're really reading what I send, if someone's like taking a survey of everything, but I keep sending, so we'll see. I don't know.
I remember in high school we had to write letters to the senator, and like we wrote it to John Breaux and Mary Landrieu, and everybody got the same exact letter back with their name on the top. So I was like, why did your letter say what I said when I told her something totally different? I was mad at them because it seems like they're up there doing nothing. They're not listening to what we have to say, maybe because we were 16 and 15, but you know.
Do any of you ever interact with politicians? Do you shake hands? Do you volunteer in offices or anything like that?
I guess I was in high school, like family, friends, and I got involved into the campaign. It was very interesting. I think that's one of the main reasons why I'm so strongly like into politics and things like that, because I think it's important. And maybe that's because my parents instilled that in me, you know, get out and vote, and I had to sit there and watch those, you know, presidential speeches and different things like that. It's important for us to like, you know, get interested in that at a young age, and I think the younger you get into that and get involved in, it has a greater influence on you later in life. Definitely.
Do issues get you involved?
Yes.
Is there a
definitely.
particular issue that you think politicians need to pay more attention to?
The war. Yeah, I think it's the war because people are dying every day, and it's like it's becoming common for you to sit in front of the TV and they're like, 3 people died, and the next day 4 more people die, and people, I'm like, why are they still there getting killed, you know? And it's like, if you would see, like it's been like a year, it's been more than a year, huh? I don't know, I remember. But I know I see it every day, people dying, and I'm like, my friends are like, I'm joining the army. I'm like, no, you know, please, no, you know.
So do you talk to them about it? Do you talk to politicians about it? Do you vote?
My stepfather is a sergeant major in the army, but he moved to the reserve unit, but he's like, he tells us about some of the inside stuff. So, I mean, I worry about it, but I don't really worry that much.
Crystal, what do you think? Are there any issues that motivate you or get you interested in voting?
Well, I don't think there's one specific one because all the issues will in some way affect me. So it's important to have an opinion, I guess, on all of them and keep well-rounded on who's voting for what and what senator believes on this and should I support that person or whatever. Because in a way, everything that they vote on, every bill they pass is one way or another eventually going to come back to have some logic to my life.
Now, David, is there anything that gets you out to vote, or do you ever campaign or get involved in those kinds of things? Any issues?
Not so much for things like that, but I mean current issues that I'm interested in are like the no smoking ban or the expansion on Starring Lane. And if you're talking about just what comes up to affect someone, well, there's 2 right there.
And so those will get you out. I mean, do any of you ever talk to politicians about issues like expansions on Starring Lane or the no smoking ban?
Sure, I do.
Yeah.
If something is affecting me and the way I feel about it, it's going to be affecting my life directly, then I take the effort to contact whatever political venue I need to.
And usually they're accessible.
The problem becomes, though, even when you speak to them, sometimes I've found with local politicians is that they'll listen and then they'll go ahead and do whatever they want because it seems like they feel like we're just kids voicing our opinion and they have to be nice and listen, patronizing, but yet they don't exactly care when it comes time to voting. And it's not nice to be just written off that easily.
Can you make a change? Can you affect politicians, before you turn 25?
I think it's with the numbers, like the number of people that try to do it. Like we need more people to help and just more people to contact their Congress people, and then it will make a change. But with 2 or 3 people going, it's not going to really change.
We need to have our own lobby. No, seriously, we need to have our own lobby for people that are younger than 30 because that's how things get done. That's the way we see things getting done. All of these politicians listen to these few special interests, and that's it. When I have met politicians, they have seemed very, they seem fake. Like they're not genuinely interested in me and my concerns.
Is that unique to Louisiana, or is that all?
I think that's nationwide.
I mean, don't forget, if you're a senator, you've got a million concerns, and it can be overwhelming at times. But there's still individually, those are my concerns, and you should pay attention to them.
Right, and then
on
you
their
have to
perspective.
remember those politicians got in because they had their own ideas, and your ideas might not go along with theirs, so they'll just listen to you and just be like whatever, and go along with their ideas. But you have to remember that's why they got into it.
Yeah, they're supposed to
So it's
represent us,
hard
though.
for them, right? But that's what they're supposed to do.
Do you ever think about running for office? Tamika, are you going to run for state senator or U.S. senator at some point?
No, I don't think I would run, but there's a lot of things that need to be changed that people doesn't look at. So far as like in health, health insurance, like people that, work only part-time, and can't afford health insurance, and not, they ought to, like if we want to get, health insurance, they ought to be able to, provide us with health insurance.
And I thought that health insurance and education, I think, are two of the biggest issues for the people in your generation. Vanessa, can you campaign? Can you run? Can you win with that as a platform?
Well, I think I could, because education is very important for young students that's going on to college today. Most parties and stuff has their opinion about education, but it's not toward students. It's more toward teachers and more thinking about teachers and professors and things like that for college. Students are not going to behave in a certain way to vote for a Republican or a Democrat, because everything's go toward adults, because they think adults are more important than a student's voice. Meaning that more students would listen to a younger party member because they have new ideas. They're not, don't have old ideas such as a 40-year-old Republican or Democrat. Therefore, they would listen to a younger person.
Now, do the parties mean a lot to you? I mean, is there a difference between a Democrat and a Republican, or a conservative and a liberal, or are they all politicians?
10 years ago, it might have been. I don't think today is as much.
Because everybody wants to go to the middle because they believe that going to the middle is how they get elected. Whereas we should want somebody who's going to be a leader, say, this is how I feel, this is my values, and whether you disagree or agree, I'm going to stand up for this, not soften and go to the middle.
What about third parties? The Green Party or the Libertarian Party?
But then you're going against the big powerhouses pretty much. You're going against the Democrats and Republicans.
Yeah, that's why Nader never wins. He runs. He never wins.
Now, Tristy, I thought I cut you off there. Don't let me.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, I consider myself to be independent, because there are things that I agree with Republicans, and there's some things that I agree with Democrats. So I prefer somebody that does want to go to the middle and find a compromise with everyone else, because our country is a compromise between different ideas.
Nobody pulls the big lever? Nobody votes D or R?
I don't think so much anymore.
I think our generation is kind of in the middle.
Now, I see what you say, Gladys, but now, Vanessa, you seem to think otherwise. Tell me more.
I think more of a Democrat, because they're more down to earth than Republican. Republicans are more higher status than a Democrat. They're more independent. They're more depending on what you think most of the time. And therefore, Republicans promise something and sometimes won't do it because either they've changed their ideas or someone else has changed it for them.
I disagree with that.
I don't think you can categorize a whole group of people Republican, a whole group of people Democrat. I think you need to vote for the particular person, and it doesn't matter if you tend to lean more liberal or more conservative. You have to vote for the person, and if you're always voting party lines, you're going to end up not getting necessarily what you want. So that's why people actually need to be looking at the people and not seeing the D or the R and go, oh, that's me.
That's right, definitely.
Where do you get your information from, Catherine? When you're trying to figure out who to vote for, how do you find out about a candidate?
Sometimes I actually ask people who I trust, who I know that are more into politics, because I don't always stay up with it, because I just have a lot going on in my life, and so sometimes I don't really find out about things until I know they're sticking to a topic that really hits home. But I'll ask, some family members, or just look online or watch the news some whenever I can, and just find out what do they really stand on. And is this someone who represents what I think and what I believe? And then if they do, then I'm like, okay, well then they're going to get my vote, because I want someone who really is confident about what they think and what they want.
Let me
But you
ask you a
shouldn't
question.
just listen.
Do y'all think that the media plays a role in a person's opinion about?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I was like, when y'all was saying one is a Republican, one is a Democrat, and everything should go in the middle, I think the media plays a positive and negative role on that. So what do y'all think about that?
Well, I was gonna say it depends on which media, because you have some stations which are a little more liberal, and then you have some which are a little more conservative. I guess like what Fox is the more conservative station. I'm not sure.
MTV.
So,
am I the only? I tend to see MTV even, which is a big station that young people watch, and it tends to be more liberal. I think it pushes that way. So, but that's something you have to like look past it and see what's really there instead of what they're trying to push at you. So
you got to filter between everything. I think the media has a great responsibility they've been charged with, that you really need to stay kind of not opinionated on certain sides to let people make their decisions. I know one thing that really kind of got to me during the election is when after the debates were over, the media came on and talked about who won. Well, let me decide that. I watched everything. I'm intelligent enough to make that decision. Yeah.
Did any of you watch The Daily Show?
yes, I love it. I have a DVR. Make sure to record it every night.
Do you filter The Daily Show?
Do I filter it?
Do you-
Well, I know. I really like to listen to what they say, and I know they're really hard, usually on whoever's in office. But especially right now, they're really hard on President Bush. But Jon Stewart, I know he keeps up with everything that's going on out there. I'm sure I've watched shows about him and stuff like that, and he's pretty on top of his politics.
Do you trust Jon Stewart's opinion on politics?
Sometimes. I mean, I just have to. If it goes with my opinion, I mean, I guess I'll trust it then. But most of the time, I do agree with what he has to say. But again, there he is. He's also there to make jokes about, satirize everything that's going on.
What about celebrities? Do you guys care about a celebrity and the celebrities' opinion?
They live in California, so
Yeah,
they're free.
They need to stay out of it completely.
Gladys, tell me more.
Look at their governor. He's a Terminator. He's not even from America. He used to be a bodybuilder. I was like, and they trust him. He's like, I'm a Republican. Everyone is a girly man, political girly man, and they let him use that word. So I'm like,
millions of dollars.
I think it's more important to look at how the people from the candidate's hometown area are voting sometimes.
That is
More so than what the media has to say, because the people who know the politician the most are probably going to reflect the truest opinion of what he would probably do for the communities.
David, I thought you were saying something and we kind of talked over you there. Tell us a little bit more.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I mean, on one hand, it seems like a kind of a circus thing because, he has been involved in some really ridiculous productions. But on the other hand, he's insanely rich. So sometimes he can actually step away from the support that politicians traditionally get, like just step off a little bit off the hardcore party line. And so that can be a good point.
Now, does money stop you or stop young people from getting involved?
yes,
Every day.
yes.
If you don't have money, you can't get involved in the process?
Not get involved.
Because gas is high.
Non-renewable resource.
You have
Makes
to
me
have so
wanna
much
cry.
money to start playing in the political game, I guess. And usually the youth don't have the resources personally to come from, nor do they have the connections to draw from the big party lines to even get elected, to have the advertising needed.
I think advertising plays too big of a role in today's political elections.
By the time the election week got here, it's like, let's just vote.
Yeah,
That's it.
I'm
That's-
tired of seeing the commercials.
Yeah,
You're so caught up in everybody's opinions here, opinions there. It's like, what do you believe anymore? I just want to hear the facts. I just want to stick with the facts and let us hear.
People get their facts probably from the advertising.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had a great discussion so far, but now we need to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by a panel of experts to further discuss youth and politics in Louisiana. We're discussing youth and politics tonight on Louisiana Public Square. Joining us now is our panel of experts. State Representative Steve Scalise from Metairie, Christy Davis, an LSU journalism student and former MTV correspondent, and State Representative Michael Jackson from Baton Rouge. Welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight. Let's go to our participants for our questions. Aaron, I know you have something to ask our experts tonight.
Oh, why do I have to be first? Why did I?
Now, Scott can cover for you if you need him to.
I've got a question if you don't.
Good. Thank you.
It kind of picks up where we left off in finances and, youth feeling it's hard to get involved in the campaign because it costs so much. Question to y'all is, how much does it cost? I'm not saying, we know from our last mayor's election, William Daniel spent $300,000 of his own dollars. Starting off, a new family or whatever, it's a lot of money for a young person to pull, shell out and then not win.
It can really vary, and the first time I ran, I was 29 years old, didn't have a lot of money, and didn't have a lot of big financial backers, but I raised probably about $35,000 in the race for the House of Representatives, and mostly did it through grassroots. No paid staff. We had a lot of volunteers, a lot of young people that got involved in my campaign, and we really put together a strong team. And won with 67% of the vote. So you can do it without a lot of money. My re-election, we ended up spending over $120,000, and I had an opponent that spent over $100,000 as well. So I guess it depends on the race, but you can do it without a huge amount of money.
There's a saying that money is the lifeblood of politics, and to a large extent that's true. But I think more important than money is strategy sometimes. The most cost-effective way of getting a message to a voter is by going face-to-face and talking to that individual. Of course, that takes a lot of time. And not many politicians are willing to invest that kind of time and energy in trying to get in front of each voter and talk to them about issues that are important to them. However, I believe it's the most effective means of communicating a message.
Definitely. Yeah. I think word of mouth is probably where I get most of my information, or I rely on.
What could also be daunting, though, is that as a young adult, especially if you're just coming out of college, it's not so much it costs so much money, it's how do I raise that money? You don't have any experience in raising that sort of money, so it's very difficult to find someone who's going to mentor you in how to beat them at their own game. Mm-hmm. So that's another problem that you're going to face if you want to get involved with politics is who do I ask for $40,000?
So I have a question. Is it who you know in order to get into it? Like, how did you get where you are? Like, was it through people?
Well, I don't think it's just who you know. It's a combination of things in running an effective campaign. I think that, we talked a little bit about one-on-ones, getting in front of people and talking about issues. I think is very effective. It's about knowing the people in a geographical area that you run in who can help you. I think that people of influence have a great deal to contribute towards anyone's campaign, but along with those individuals, I think it's just getting your message out and what's the most effective means for you. And you have to make that decision to get your message out.
You were saying before, one of your techniques is to make sure that you talk to people face to face. I think one of our biggest concerns is not being heard by young people. So what are some techniques that you guys use to find these young people and find out, what they really think about certain topics? And do you really listen? And
Yeah, and
do you take it all
I knocked
into
on over 10,000 doors the first time I ran, and I had a platform, some things that I really felt strongly about that I wanted to change about the state. And I went to the voters and I told them what I believed in on certain issues, but then I was also educated on a lot of issues that I didn't even know about. As you knock on people's doors, you're going to hear a lot of different things, and a lot of the things that I've done in the legislature, a number of them come from people calling my office, talking to me, people that I never knew before that had an idea. And in some cases, it might take a few years, but the Motion Picture Incentive Act that I passed a few years ago took me 4 years to pass, but that idea came from somebody in my district, and ultimately now it's led to over 3,000 jobs. So anything that you want to do to contact somebody, you pick up the phone. Most of us are all listed in the phone book and very accessible and are interested in ideas. And if we don't agree, I'll tell you, and I'm sure a lot of other people will too, but sometimes you might have an idea that nobody's ever heard of.
What were those issues that made the two of you run for office? What were the issues that made you want to get involved in politics?
To me, it was our economy. I was a student at LSU in the late 1980s. I saw all of our young people, it seemed like, were leaving the state when they would graduate, and I was in that number that had a lot more opportunities out of the state than in, and I didn't like seeing it, but I felt it wasn't because of the problems of Louisiana, it was because of the problems of our failed leadership. And I wanted to change the leadership. I worked on other people's campaigns that I thought could do that, and ultimately the time came when other people asked me to step up and run, and ultimately I did, because I feel like if you have beliefs, you should express them one way or another. You have to vote. You have to let your feelings be known, and in some cases run yourself if you want to make change.
Representative Jackson, when did you get involved in politics at first, and what got you motivated?
Well, I guess my initial start in politics was in working with the person who held the seat prior to me running for office. Having an opportunity to work with that individual, understand the politics of District 61 here in Baton Rouge, and then when he decided that it was not something that he wanted to do, continue in politics, he was thinking about resigning and retiring from it, he asked me to consider running for the office. So that was my initial start in it, into politics, and it's good. I mean, I started off, I think I was, when I started working with Jetson, who was in the seat prior to me, I probably was in my early 20s, but he gave me an opportunity to learn a little bit about the position and what it entails in serving and working in the community, and it gave me somewhat of a head start, I think, from just someone who was not able to work within a particular office.
How has it changed since you guys have been involved? I mean, do you try and reach young voters in a different way?
Well, I think, we don't get anywhere in this business by ignoring folks. And, when I get communications from anybody, young or old, it's my obligation to try to respond. I've made a concerted effort to visit schools, to take advantage of the back to school day at the legislature, which we host every year, where legislators actually go back into schools and talk about the importance of civic involvement and engage students at that level.
Tristy, earlier we talked about politicians getting, at least there's the image that politicians are dirty or corrupt in some way. Do you have any questions for our experts about that process?
I have you're talking about going to the schools, and I know that when I was in high school and I saw politicians come to my school, the only thought I had was they're just trying to get reelected, and they want me to go home and tell my mommy and daddy that they came to my school and they care about whether or not I have books. So while we are saying we want to see you out, we want to see you face to face, we want to talk about the issues, when they come to talk about the issues, you leave with, well, they don't really here to see me, they just want to get their job back. So what do you guys want to see as far as really getting face to face? Because also, if he comes to knock on your door, are you really going to stand there and listen? If he comes to knock on your door and Punk'd is on, which are you going to pick? I mean, most people, I know a lot of the people here are a little bit more politically involved, but most people our age are going to pick Punk'd. So what do they have to do to get your attention? And they've gone on MTV, and that doesn't necessarily work. And they've knocked on your door, and maybe that's not working. So, where's the happy medium for you all?
You have to show that you truly care. Like, it's one thing to come knock on the door and be like, if you answer the door, where's your parents? I need to speak to Mrs. Wicker. And I'm like, I'm Miss Wicker, you want to speak to me? I want to be important too. And I think it's a lot of times we're not the audience that is intended to listen to what y'all are trying to say.
I have a comment actually. When you mentioned school, I remember when I was younger, we took a trip to the Capitol, and I think that was one of the most influential things for me in the realm of politics. I'm not really deeply into politics, and I'm just your average college student, But I just think when you get them younger, like middle school age or high school, and you actually give them a hands-on experience to where they're feeling it, they're seeing it, they're doing it, they're meeting representatives, they're speaking with them, shaking their hands, I think it maybe decreases the intimidation when they get older to find out about politics. The day I walked in the Capitol for the first time, I was amazed. I was like, well, it's not so bad. What's everyone freaked out about? But I think politicians' visits to school will be very effective in middle school and high school. I was always up for it.
The thing about being scumbags and stuff is that, a lot of people think that politicians are scumbags and they're just out for the money that they're getting from special interests. And I think the way that politicians need to get over that is to back up what they say and vote the way that you're telling your constituents that you feel. Because sometimes we see everyone we talk to says this about an issue, but you voted the other way. So are you really our voice or not? You know?
Yeah, and you get a lot of that. One of the things, and I would say in the last few years, I've seen a much bigger increase in emails versus people writing letters, and I get thousands of emails every legislative session, people asking you to vote for or against an issue and why, and I try to respond to all of them myself. But as far as the perception I think that people have about politics being corrupt, let's face it, Louisiana does have a real problem with our past, and it's one of our biggest hurdles is to get beyond and try to change the way that our politics used to be. I think finally the public's toleration for corruption is gone, and I think that's a good thing. I think some investigations you're seeing a lot more, and I think that the federal agents are saying corruption's not going to be tolerated anymore, and I think that's a good thing because it'll finally get us beyond that, and then let's focus on real issues, and we can disagree, but at least let's disagree on issues and get beyond worrying about if somebody's corrupt.
Do you actually keep track of the constituents' opinions and tally those up and take that into consideration when you vote?
I usually will do a survey at the beginning of the session on various issues that are going to be coming up, and I'll even send back a response later on to show what the final results were once I get all the surveys tabulated. And there are some times where I might vote a different way, and I'll explain the reasons why. And a lot of times people will not have paid attention to or saw a certain issue a certain way before, and then after they see it from the other side, they change their position. So.
But as far as the constituent emails, do you track those at all?
Yeah, and of course a lot of times you don't know where it's coming from if it doesn't have an address. It could be in your district or not, but it's still somebody's opinion. If it is somebody in your district, especially if it's something that relates specifically to the district, then that's going to be kind of a different issue, because what you fight for your own district is a lot different than the statewide issues, because you have to deal with both.
Normally, we've done a district-wide mail-out, which would include a survey in an effort to, before the session that we have, we try to get the information from the constituents that they consider to be important. Now, these mail-outs go to voters. Now, if you're not a voter and there's ways of determining who's voting and who's not voting, certainly you wouldn't get one of those newsletters because of the cost involved in sending a newsletter out and the cost involved in mailing. So I think it's important for young folks to set up a track record of voting. I agree with Olivia that if young people have an opportunity to engage the process at an earlier age, they become more comfortable with the process, and that habit of participating becomes something that they will continue. When they reach the age of majority, when they reach 18, you won't be a part of that group that's not voting. You'll be one of the ones that are actually increasing the numbers of voters in the state of Louisiana.
Jeffrey, I know you are active. You said that you were involved in politics, or not involved in politics, but involved in the process. What are two things that you would like elected officials to know about youth? Or what two issues do you think that politicians
youth
should
or
know
politics
about?
in general?
What are the issues what are your issues that are
I live
important
in
to
New
you?
Orleans, and there's probably the #1 crime rate. They have potholes, like you can step, everywhere you step, you got to put like a raincoat over it just to go over it. What else? The economy is like, that's why everybody's leaving, because the economy is just going down. What do y'all think is the #1 thing that the state of Louisiana needs to work on? Because everybody's like, they need to work on education, they need to work on the potholes. What's the #1 thing that you think needs to be worked on?
I think education and economic development go hand in hand, and combined is our most important thing at the state level that we need to deal with, because things like crime are handled at the local level. But economic development, I don't think you have to wait for education to get completely fixed before you can create jobs, because I've seen businesses move jobs to and from places more based on economic decisions, because we've got a good education system in our higher ed especially, and people leave the state when they graduate. And so we've got good, talented people. We're just letting them leave to go make other states successful. So I think if we continue, and we've done good things with our education reform and building accountability, showing where failing schools are, and then going and trying to fix them, and then at the same time, you've got to make sure our tax structure is good. We've seen cases where, because we tax businesses a certain way, they won't come here. They'll build a car plant in Alabama or Mississippi, but not in Louisiana, because our taxes are too high in certain areas, not because of education. So you've got to handle both and deal with both in order to be successful.
Brian, what are your issues? What are the 2 issues that you want to make sure Representative Jackson understands?
Well, I've always thought that the reason why young people don't vote is because they don't see the government as being relevant in their lives. They have a lot of other issues that they have to worry about as they're coming up through school and trying to find a job. And it strikes me that politicians would do well to simply explain the relevance of public policy, whatever the party and whatever the issue is, why government is relevant to their lives. And once they fix that, then the voter turnout will increase a lot. I don't know. I'd like to know your opinion on that.
Well, I think the way that we help young people to understand that government is relevant is by helping them to understand and appreciate government at an earlier age. We talked about that a little bit earlier. It's hard. I think it's very difficult to grab somebody at the age of 18 and then say, okay, you're an adult now, participate in the process. I think that it doesn't happen like that. There has to be an opportunity to understand issues, and you need to speak about issues on your own terms. I think this forum is a perfect forum where young people are assembling, getting together, talking about issues that you deem important. I can't force an issue on you and tell you to talk about it because you may not deem that issue important to you. But you need to have opportunities, young people need to have opportunities to talk about issues on their own terms and decide what's important. Somebody said earlier about having a lobby, having folks to represent your issues. I think that's a great idea. We just need more opportunities to get information, and it's all of our responsibility. It's not just the elected officials, it's government's role, it's school's role, it's everybody's. Everybody has a stake in you becoming more informed and playing more of a role in this thing we call democracy.
And one of the things that I do throughout the year, and I enjoy it, is I have town hall meetings in my district. And one of the things I do before I do question and answer is I go through the state budget. We have an $18.7 billion state budget. I personally think it's too big, but I break it down both where the money comes from and then where the money is spent. And I find most of the questions I get are based on, once people see what the real budget is and how the money is spent and where it comes from, then you see a lot of people really kind of piquing their interest and saying, wait a minute, why is this done that way? And I think those are all good questions. And then you start really getting into the policy and seeing why things happen and then taking a look at you. Following the money seems to always be the best way to figure something out.
Did you guys ever have a difficult time trying to find out how what you wanted fixed or discussed, how to get it fixed or discussed? Because what I've run into with young adults is, well, yeah, that's a problem, but what can the government do about it? Yeah. And when the students shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know what the government can do about it, or the young adults say that, the politicians tend to go, I don't know what the government can do about it either. and then all of a sudden it becomes a non-issue.
I think the frustrating thing is we can discuss it all day long, but then you look outside and nothing's been done. You go, okay, and I understand it takes a while. Then you wait a little longer and still nothing's been done. It gets aggravating, frustrating, then finally you give up. That's, I think, the main thing. I mean, we can discuss it. I mean, we can think of ideas, but it's implementing those ideas.
It's easy to become
I'll tell you, persistence I've found is probably the most important value that you can have as a legislator, because I'll give you the example of the motion picture incentives. I initially filed the bills in 1998, got nowhere, couldn't even get the bills out of committee, kept coming back, and finally in 2002 I passed the legislation, and literally by the end of that year we brought in over $100 million into our state. And so you got to bang your head against a wall sometimes, but eventually if you keep pushing, you're going to effect change. And I've seen that in lots of areas where you might not get it the first time. Sometimes you do, but if you keep coming back and if you've got an idea that actually makes sense, you can continue to try to build your coalition and ultimately get it done.
Well, why was that bill pushed back? Because I've read a lot about what I didn't realize you sponsored the bill, how much economic development is brought to our state. Honestly, I would wish that would happen in '98. I think we could have brought even more people into the state.
I do too. There's a difference of opinion. There are some people that don't like the idea of tax incentives. The term corporate welfare is used a lot, saying, oh, you're giving away money to big business and all this kind of thing. The thing is, businesses make their decision based on that, and businesses in the film industry were going to Canada because not just Louisiana but other states had the problem. And so ultimately your decision has to be, do you want to create jobs? And if you do, you've got to be aggressive because it's very competitive. And other states and other countries want those jobs too. And sometimes you have to go the extra mile, but when you bring them in, ultimately people working, having jobs, they're going to have health insurance. They don't have to go to your charity hospitals, and they don't have to get welfare if they've got good jobs. And so it's a philosophical debate, and obviously it took a while for us to break that logjam.
It also takes a while for young adults. We also have to keep remembering that we are from a generation that expects it right now, quick. And, you know, that's a normal amount of time, I think, to get something to go through. And what we forget as young adults is that not everything is going to move as fast as the internet. You know, not everything is going to go through tomorrow. I presented it, it looks good, let's go. You know, things take time. Things take argument, discussion, compromise. You can't have everything you want just the way you want it. And no one is saying that to young adults. You know, we want it now, and they try and give it to us now. When they can't, you know, we get upset.
What type of topics do you include when you go to schools to discuss how the political process works?
Well, I think, you know, it depends on the age group that you're dealing with. We deal with elementary schools as well as high school students. But ultimately, I mean, what we normally do is try to give them an appreciation for what our jobs entail and how the democratic process works. We talk about the importance of voting. We talk about state government. We talk about the system of you know, the system of government in which we have two houses, and how a bill is presented and how it's ultimately passed through the process. So basic information to get them a little bit more engaged in the process, and hopefully to understand what's going on. You'd be surprised that some of our students just don't have any appreciation for government and what we do as politicians.
Yeah, and one of the things and I know Michael's done this too, but when I go to the schools during the legislative back to school week, I'll try to break the groups up and try to talk about an issue and get the different kids in the school to come up with some proposals of laws to change. And it's funny how it always goes back to simple things like food. They don't like the school food, and so they'll say, you know, we want to be able to go and get fast food. And they say, okay, well, y'all pick which kind of food you want. Well, you would have thought we started a riot, and all of a sudden the kids have these big arguments, and then after maybe about 15, 20 minutes, you see them come to compromise, and they understand a little better how the process works. But sometimes it's little basic issues where people, first they disagree, and then they figure out how you come to a compromise, and then you can take those same principles and apply them to more complex issues.
This has been a great discussion, and I hope we can continue this discussion at home. We want to thank Christy Davis, Representative Michael Jackson, and Representative Steve Scalise for being with us tonight. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments.
Louisiana, the state we're in. Every week we offer statewide coverage of news-making headlines, politics, culture, history, the environment, and more. Join hosts Robin Eckings and Charlie Wynnum for the 28th season of this award-winning news magazine. Louisiana, the state we're in.
Well, Craig, a lively discussion, an intelligent group of young people.
Boy, I mean, you said that youth aren't involved, but not this bunch right here. I mean, everybody seems like they're really involved in the process, and, you know, the future looks bright.
Well, it was a great conversation, but you know, the voters at home, or the not voters, the watchers at home, are a little more pessimistic. We asked the question, what about people your age? Do you think government pays attention to what people your age think when it decides what to do? A good deal, some, or not much. 18% said a good deal, 36% said some, and 45% said not much. Well, I think tonight we certainly had a great conversation, though.
We did. There's still work to be done, and I think communication is going to be the key to getting some of those issues solved.
I'm still not clear about blogs. We didn't talk about, but learning the internet and all of that was most interesting, and somebody listens to NPR, so that made me happy, too.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. Well, Craig, we loved having you on the show, your first show.
Thanks.
We'll be back again, and that's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We invite you to go online, take the full survey about education by going to lpb.org, and political involvement. Next month, we'll take a look at coastal erosion, a problem of incredible complexity and importance to all Louisianians. Thanks for watching, and good night.
A home video of this program is available. For more information, call 1-800-973-7246 or write to the address on your screen.